Hey everybody, welcome to Leaning Into Discomfort with Athletics. My name is Christal Brown, and today I have the distinct pleasure of having a conversation for the first time with Andrew Plumley. Andrew, class of 2011, tell us your connection to Middlebury and athletics.
Yeah, well, first off, it's great to be here, and it is, as you said, it is our first conversation. So I'm glad to be here with you and share a little bit about myself and learn a little bit from you. But as you said, I'm Middlebury class of 2011. I played football for Coach Ritter, who's still the football coach, and I played point guard for Coach Brown, who's still doing his thing as well. So it's good to be here.
Yeah. You know, Andrew, I've been the chair of the dance program before, director of Midcore. Right now I'm serving as the chair of the anti-racist task force. And what I really think about a lot and have been thinking about since I got to Middlebury is how similar the arts and athletics are, right? And like we were talking, this is our first conversation, we're having it publicly, but I've also been delving into this idea artistically about how curiosity gives us the understanding of things that are same but different about us, right? And so in the Middlebury community, we are the same because we are part of a small population of African-American students, faculty, staff who go through the ranks of Middlebury in different ways. But we're also different. Like I grew up in the South, you grew up.
I grew up in Burlington, Vermont, 45 minutes south of Middlebury, or north, sorry.
Yeah. And so our upbringing was very different. Like when it snowed where I'm from, even like flurries, the whole town shut down and there was no school.
That's right. I had maybe 3 snow days my whole life, and now that I'm down here in DC, I mean, if the wind blows too hard, we're shutting down. So
right. So you understand, right? So we understand each other from a different kind of life trajectory. Like our points of origin and now our places of living are kind of at the opposite ends of weather and culture.
Very much so. Very much so. Definitely that culture piece too.
Definitely the culture piece, right? So tell me some things about you, Andrew, that are the same living in DC that were the same growing up in Burlington.
I mean, there are a lot of same things, and I think a lot of them are how I've ended up building community and what I look for in community in terms of support, in terms of joy, in terms of those sorts of things. I do think that there are a lot of samenesses in some of the things that I wish weren't the same in terms of segregation. DC is a very segregated city district, and same with where I grew up in Burlington. There are, in terms of socioeconomic status, in terms of race, we live in a very segregated society. If we know that or understand that or not, that's the case. So I see that here in DC. I saw that in Burlington as well, and I saw that on Middlebury campus often too. So those are some same things. Yeah. What about you?
Well, you could take the girl out of the country. You can't take the country out.
Yeah.
One of the things that I had to really kind of tone down is that when I'm riding in my car and I see people on the side of the road who I know who are taking a walk, where I'm from, you're supposed to roll down the window and be like, hey, they'd be like, what did I do? What happened? So I had to start noticing that was a cultural difference.
Yeah.
I still do fry fish in my garage. We feed the whole neighborhood. Anytime the garage is up, before COVID, they're like tables lined in the garage. People come by, get a plate, sit in the yard for a little bit. And that's just country, it doesn't matter. I know that it was also a little bit of a rub in terms of New England culture, because people would say to me, I was going to stop by your house, but I didn't know if you were at home. And I would say, did you ring the doorbell? And they'd be like, no, I didn't want to bother you. And I was like, how do you know you're bothering me?
And you know what I noticed right there too is even when you said New England, you used a voice that was quiet and you were talking like this. And then when you answered yourself, like, did you ring the doorbell? It was louder. There was something in there. So I even noticed that, those differences as well.
Oh yeah. Country and loud.
Yeah, absolutely.
For being candid.
Yeah. Yeah. No, I think about that same and different thing too, because, when I think about that kind of concept growing up, I was very much different in so many ways based on my skin color in an all white space or majority white space in Vermont and in Burlington. But I felt so similar in all of the kind of things I did after school, the conversations I had or that I was hearing. And so like there was always this kind of push and pull of same and different. And then, this is our first conversation, but so I was adopted. I was born in San Antonio, Texas.
Uh-huh.
I moved up to Burlington, Vermont with my two white adoptive parents. And I also had the opportunity to meet my birth parents and seeing the sameness in how I looked for the first time when I was 24, 25, after I had my experiences in Burlington and Middlebury, where I'm thinking about that now too. It's that kind of looking the same, but being so different was just, it was dramatic. It was a wild thing. We laughed and talked, and they could barely understand what I was saying. And I was having a hard time understanding what they were saying. And, but there was still that like joy and connection based on that sameness of how we all looked.
Yeah, that's awesome because, my son is growing up here in Vermont. He's been here since he was 2. And when he attempts to talk to our relatives in the South, I'm like, just stop, please, just stop. Just like, please don't do that anymore.
Yep, it's true. It's really true.
Foreign. It's so funny to me because, it's a thing, but also I have this dear friend who you actually might run into. His name is Bamuthi Joseph. He's the director of the Kennedy Center, over the director of the community engagement for the Kennedy Center. But
I know the name.
Yeah. So he and I were talking one day and I used the word code switching. And he was like, I'd like to think of it as code surfing because he's a poet, right? So the idea is that, especially for me growing up in the South and kind of moving up past the Mason-Dixon line, the code surfing became more important, right? Because the surfing was more balanced inside of my own being. It wasn't like I was switching from one of me to another of me. It was integrating and staying balanced. And in this way that we're talking about same but different, I grew up in the South with, 2 Black parents, one who had been to Vietnam twice, the other one who was a burgeoning socialite, never graduated from college, a brother who was 8 years older, so I was kind of like an only child. But my educational experience beginning in 2nd grade became me as kind of this test dummy, basically, in these academically gifted classes. So I was the only, we call it a fly in a bowl of milk in the South. Like I was the fly in the bowl of milk at school all day. Yep. And that's what got me to understand that idea of code surfing, the idea of access. And it really translated into a lot of what I think has allowed me to be successful at Middlebury, right? Like it was like, oh, you know how to do this, right? I was the only kind of Black girl in all my dance classes. I was like this pageant kid who became the 2nd Black junior miss in the history of the whole program. Like it was this thing of like navigating and accelerating through this other structure. Yep. But at the same time, my mother was a, kind of activist. So I was tap dancing at Black Caucus rallies and NAACP meetings. And like, it was a whole other thing that was happening. Right.
Yeah. I love that, the distinction between code switching and code surfing, because I think that code surfing allows you to stay whole, allows a wholeness of the person. That code switching seems like you do have to leave someplace else. And I love that you could do the tap dancing at the Black Caucus. The CBC week here is on point. It always has been, always will be. But for me too, it brings up my Blackness and how I moved through the world was always from a different vantage point, not coming specifically from Black culture or kind of or activist spaces like your mom, but really from being just not white. So I think there was in many ways a sense of questioning what does that actually mean for me? But in a lot of ways, and what I've thought about as an adult, a young adult, is that it allowed me to be a little bit more free because there weren't necessarily, or at least in my perspective, there were kind of no guide rails for me. I felt like I could do anything that I wanted. And then that ended up being what my blackness ended up being for me. And so that code switching did turn into code surfing at some point. And I'm still working on that. And when I'm surfing and making sure that I'm not switching all the time.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. I mean, I think it's an interesting distinction because what I think is different, Andrew, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, is that when you decide what your blackness should look like, it's a different trajectory.
Yes.
But when you only have one option, when you're told that it's a certain singular focus, when you're told that the identity and the character and the drive and the intuition all have to fit into a certain mold, that's when I think we get that's when your blackness becomes oppressive.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And it's that whole thing. I mean, Black people are not a monolith. I
No,
mean, and that's what that's what this conversation really is all about. But yeah, it's when it just is supposed to be, and for a lot of my friends when I was younger, it was like what we saw on TV. And that is, from my experience now, that has nothing to do with the expression and the beautiful thing that is blackness that I've seen all around the world, frankly. And so it's really moving away from that one way of being to something much, much different.